Andrew S. here, and today I'm going to be talking about some Iron Age metal here. We got some Judas Priest. Before I dive into this, I sort of want to explain like how I came to this and why I decided to talk about Turbo here. Now, when I did Dio's The Last in Line, it was sort of, I talked about how like I felt like The Last in Line was overshadowed by Holy Diver, just because of like what that album accomplished and what it did for Dio and how recognizable and historic that album is. And I was talking to Vendel at Vendel's Metal and stuff, and I asked him, because I was listening to Judas Priest and I was listening to Turbo, and I sort of thought there's some harsh critiques behind this album. And I asked him his thoughts on this album, and he said like the same thing, that like it's a very solid album. And he sort of agreed that like The Last in Line, Turbo I feel like is overshadowed because Priest takes a different direction, and it's following up like albums like Scream for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith, which are both like faster, they're aggressive. They have some very atmospheric tracks on them, very sharp, a lot of interesting stuff. But and then Turbo takes quite a different direction, a more 80s hard rock, maybe people call it arena rock type of sound. But I really feel like there's still a lot of good songs, a lot of good classic Judas Priest, leads and works and Rob Halford stuff, and atmospheres and stuff on it. And I think like it's kind of was overshadowed because it went in a different direction, and it might have like upset some the stubborn old traditional heavy metal fans from the 70s, or the stubborn Judas Priest fans, or whatever, like you would say, and weren't open-minded enough to really listen to all the nuances within it. So, and that's why I decided to talk about Turbo. And right off the bat, I always loved Turbo Lover. This track, like, this is one of the first tracks I ever heard from Priest, and it still resonates with me today. I love it. I love how it just, the beginning of this song opens up the album. It just has this sonic, mesmerizing synths joined by these sexy chords that just come in, and it's just really seductive. The drum beat has swagger. It is seductive. Rob Halford's melodies are seductive, and the song gradually builds. It lures you in. It gets you sort of on the edge of your seat. You have these gradual sensations as the power chords strike, and eventually you build up along with the chords, Rob Halford. Eventually it all erupts in the chorus with such a memorable chorus, and then you keep cruising along. It is absolutely awesome. Rob Halford amplifies his range, so everything sort of evolves and builds, and then the second verse is even better, and so on and so on, and an awesome solo and things like that. So just a really great opening track, and a perfect opening track for an album, in my opinion, the way it lures in the listener. Then you get hit by a song like Locked In. This is a fiery, pulse pounding track. I love the chords behind this are awesome. Rob Halford belting out notes, but the solo, actually I find like the solo is the most hooky thing for me. This solo is like a rocket headed for the sun. Piercing notes, screaming bends, vibrant scaling, fierce speed. It's just freaking fantastic. I love what Glenn and KK do here. It is absolutely a killer, solo. It's an identity or an entity of its own. Well, it does have its own identity, but the notes you feel are more, like I sometimes say, it's like the notes are kind of like lyrics or a singer. I felt like that's really what comes alive and Locked In. You really feel these, and the notes are like the lyrics and someone singing. That's how I, perceive, and that's how I felt Locked In solo. Then I can sort of understand. Then we get to this is the part where I can sort of hear the griping of like traditional metal fans or traditional Judas Priest fans, is when it comes to the more North American rock songs, the arena rock songs, something that's a little more Def Leppard, not traditional Judas Priest. So these two songs just right after that, they're sort of early and middle in the album, sort of, and then they head off. But anyways, I can sort of see the gripe behind that, but there's still good songs, there's still good melodies and good hooks behind these two tracks. And then two songs that are kind of similar, but also separate themselves and kind of have a bit more traditional Judas Priest vibe, are Rock You All Around the World and Wild Nights and Hot and Crazy Days. That's one song I could show you there. That's not three songs that I mentioned, but that's just two. Anyways, yeah, these two songs I felt like are similar to Parental Guidance and Private Property, but they're also like a little bit more traditional Judas Priest in a sense. Like I felt like They kind of remind you of like Hot Rockin' or Living After Midnight. It's just a 1986 type of style of them. Like they both have this energy. They're both fiery, fist pumping, highway cruising type of songs. Great energy. Both contain some awesome guitar details, great riffs, thumping drums, some sharp solo work. Both really cool songs. I like the energy behind them, and I kind of like how they bookend my next track that I want to talk about. Now this next one though, Out in the Cold, I'm decided it should be my must listen to because there's so much depth, so much atmosphere and emotions in this one. It has this brilliant atmosphere. That frigid intro just breathes cold darkness, the loneliness that comes in the form of the lyrics. And then you got the pain, which is in the form of Rob Halford's vocals and guitars. The little nuances just scream panic, confusion, sadness. There's just a wild array of emotions and atmosphere in this. I really felt like the type of atmosphere in Out in the Cold was a precursor to what we would hear in A Touch of Evil. Now you might think, how does that? Those two songs are very different, but the atmosphere is here. The song base is here for that. The darkness, the sort of sorrow, the sinisterness. Maybe not quite as dark and sinister is as A Touch of Evil is Out in the Cold, but that bass is here, I feel, for that song. And I really felt like a good example of that is you hear in the bonus track on this, All Fired Up, it contains a riff from Nightcrawler. So if a song like All Fired Up is just completely different from Nightcrawler because it's more of a hard rock, it's more of a locked in sort of sounding track with its tempo, can fit in a song as devious and aggressive as Nightcrawler, you can sort of move those things around and add them and use them as a base and stuff and fit them into other songs and drastically change, you know, the atmosphere and the intensity of a song. It doesn't really matter. It's not really hard. All you do is change, you know, some tempos, you change some little things here and there, and you can really change a song. I've done it all the time, but that's why I really think Out in the Cold is a song that really gave the template, gave the bass and atmosphere of that sort of little darkness and confusion that Out in the Cold has, and you can sort of feel it in like Blood Red Skies off of Ram It Down is another good example, but definitely A Touch of Evil and Painkiller. So that's why I think this is my must listen to, because there's so much there that's underrated in my opinion. Then we move on to the last couple of tracks on the album, Hot for Love. This one has great tempo, crunchy attitude riffs. I love the way I could feel the guitar in this. You get some hooky ass chorus and another wicked solo. Truly an entity of its own, just like Locked In. I really love this one as well. This one, you know, I visualized so much, I could feel so much coming out of this one. Like a lioness on the prowl, wanting to rip, you know, one's leather off of one's body. And, you know, I just love the energy, the attitude behind this solo. Glenn and KK, they absolutely light it up on this one. I love the harmonization part from both of those. It's absolutely glorious. Awesome song is Hot for Love. I love the seductiveness as well behind it, and you know, it's not just attitude in your face, but there's also like a smoothness to this track too, kind of like peanut butter. But then, you know, these two, I really feel like I've always paired up Hot for Love and Reckless, go hand in hand to close out the album. Reckless, it contains some crunchy ass riffs along like Hot for Love with a killer ass lead melody. I love the lead melody to this. Rob Halford has this sort of subtle and potent syllable elevations that I found were gripping, that sort of help build, you know, help you feel the lyrics a bit more, help work with the chords and the guitar melodies as well, so they sort of work in tandem. And when Rob Halford shows off his range, he truly shows why he is a one of a kind and absolutely kills it. You know, not only on Reckless, well, he kills it on anything he does, I find, in my opinion. Rob Halford just has this unique, you know, ability. He's so dynamic, and he was always evolving too. Like, you can just hear that his evolution from Sin After Sin to Scream for Vengeance to this, to Painkiller, to his solo projects like Fight and what he did with Resurrection and Crucible. He was always elevating his game and always adding things, especially in like something like Judas Priest's Nostradamus. You hear him go full operatic and, you know, carry so much power there. So absolutely killer work from Rob Halford and everyone in Judas Priest. That's why I love this album. I think it's overrated. I mean, not overrated. I think it's underrated, but overshadowed by what Priest did with Scream for Vengeance and Defenders of the Faith. So many hits, such a different sound, and then Judas Priest sort of going with the times with this album in 1986, sort of going with what America was doing at the time, and sort of, you know, like Motley Crue and Def Leppard, and sort of that feel, I guess, a little bit. But it's still good because it's still Judas Priest, and it still has their touch and their flair, their guitar work, Halford's vocals, of course, their atmosphere, stuff like that. All those great lead melodies and solo work, which is, you know, clearly one of a kind as well. But, you know, those are my thoughts on Turbo and why I think it's very underrated. Tell me what you think. Go down in the description below. Of course, check out my must listen to Out in the Cold. I'll have all the songs obviously down there, as well as my own channels and stuff like that. And if you have an album that you think is underrated, that, you know, people might, you know, overlook because of whatever reasons, let me know in the comments. I'll definitely check it out. I like trying to do these, pick up the little things like that that a lot of people don't hear. But, you know, I hope you guys check out Turbo, killer album. Until next time, folks, how about some heavy listening?